All right, Dr. Saul Bautista is a physician on a mission to transform healthcare here in the United States. His education includes a bachelor's degree in biology from Rutgers, Newark, master's of public health with a concentration in social and behavioral health sciences from the Rutgers School of Public Health, and a medical degree from Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School. He has a total of 3 years postgraduate clinical training in internal medicine, pediatrics, and family medicine. Wow. His expertise and future directions lie in prevention and the emergent field of lifestyle medicine. Saul believes that medicine can be used as a vehicle for social change. His vision is to build a healthcare system that mitigates and prevents chronic disease by empowering people to be active stewards of their health and constructing communities that foster a culture of health by addressing lifestyle and social determinants of health. Thanks for coming on, Saul. Appreciate you, buddy.
I appreciate you for having me. And, coincidentally, we're talking about creating communities of health and encouraging lifestyle change. And I think one of the greatest examples of that was you. And I remember talking to you a couple of years ago, like, whoa, because it was just from 1 month to the other. There's just, and I knew it took longer than that, but you had a really transformative change, and I don't know if that's something you spoke about here on the podcast, but I think we can start there because I think that's a great starting point. Like
for sure.
How did you go about making that change, and what inspired you, and what did you learn along the way?
Sure. For me, I know I was like 36% body fat. And I just know I can make a change because I just didn't feel comfortable in my clothes. I didn't feel comfortable running. I had this weird snoring that kept going on at night. It was mild OSA, sleep apnea. So I had a lot of issues going on that I did not know that were underlying. And it was just due to just a freshman 15, drinking, smoking, just doing the things that I did when I was younger, because you don't know better, right? You don't know what are the causes of your lifestyle, and just living like that college lifestyle and just being in those dorm rooms or those that environment where it's like a frat house, or if it's just like just an environment that's like constantly like a little dirty and a little just hectic and crazy. I think that made me realize like, hey, like I'm back home with my parents, I really want to make a change, and this is something that is I'm actively trying to do, and I'm trying to make another transformation happen. And hopefully it's a six-pack this time and not just something that I talk to myself out of it. So it's something maybe I can talk to you about too. So
see, my door is wide open. You can definitely talk to me about that, and I can definitely help you to get there. I think you mentioned something really important, and I think that's something we all go through, which is we put ourselves in these environments, whether it be college, the military, certain work cultures. And next thing you know, especially I see this happen a lot. And I find these sort of like age points where people's bodies dramatically change. And it's from 18 to 21, at 25, at 30, at 35, and 40. There's like a gradual, I always tend to see it. And I think for a lot of us, it kind of sneaks up on us because we're doing the same things we were doing when we were younger, or we're engaging in similar behaviors, but our physiology is changing. And lo and behold, we wake up one day and like, holy smokes,
insane.
And kudos to you for taking it upon yourself to just say, hey, I'm going to try to learn more and I'm going to commit to changing my own individual behaviors. But I wanted to ask you something really interesting to me because, all my friends in medical school, there's like this, they kind of say it as like a running joke that like, hey, in the Indian community, like you can't sneeze without being next to like a doctor, right? Because there's someone knows someone that knows someone that's like a doctor.
No, it's very true.
how it could, you said that you had all these issues and you didn't really know, right? And how do you think that is, that in an entire in a community where someone knows someone that's a physician, like how do you think that those dots weren't connected? Like, what do you think was missing? Like,
I think it's yeah, no, that's a great question actually, Saul and Dr. Batista. Is it Bautista or is it how do you pronounce it? By any chance?
Batista's fine, but Saul, you can just call me Saul, man. That's
All right,
no
awesome,
need for
awesome.
formalities here, you know.
No, no, 100%. We
But I
love the respect.
appreciate the respect, you know.
No, definitely, definitely. I mean, it helps the viewers too, right? To address you a certain way. I know I'm your
Yeah.
friend, but helps the viewers too.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's just like more so about like embarrassment and almost like being a minority too. Like sometimes like being part of the of like a brown community, it's almost like you can't complain about mental health, you can't complain about weight, you can't complain about your looks. So it's just like a certain standard I have to always keep meeting. So I think that was it. And I felt like even whatever I did, it wouldn't help. And just even like, even in the community itself, it was a little bit more so about the people always wanting the next big thing and they didn't understand like my current situation. So it's just like, it was one of those things where like everyone just wants something like at a very high standard. And I felt like the just like materialistic stuff or just things that are like in their lives like they just want to grasp, and I felt like I wasn't one of those people like that could just go up to them and open up to them. The conversations are very external facing, it's not internal facing, so I can't really you know tell them that hey, I'm going through this issue or that issue. So it was just about opening up, man. I mean, it just feels like it's a whole community, but sometimes the community also has its drawbacks too, I think. But yeah, I think that was what it was.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because on the one token, it's a really high achieving community by traditional
Yes.
standards, and that's something I always like admired of all my Indian friends. Like in medical school, I was like, just like, man, you guys have like really connected
Yeah.
families, and they're really high achieving and good values, and I was like, man, that's awesome. Like, but on the one token, uh,
Yeah.
it can in, it can lead to wanting to be connected and accepted by that community, and that may put people in a place where they may feel socially isolated or even lonely in a way because they can't express emotionally their concerns or fears. Right? You don't want the aunties talking ish behind your back, right?
No, no, I
Spreading
don't
that
want them
around,
talking shit. Already
right?
talking up shit, man. They're already talking up shit. They want to
Right?
give one more excuse. Yeah, no, I feel you.
Yeah, I can feel that, and I think like that's a good segue to because I think you touched upon something really important, uh, which is the role, and even now we're starting to know more and more the role of social connectedness and positive psychology and the role that it plays in health. I mean, it's dramatic if people who feel connected to their communities, they feel a sense of purpose. Actually, it's starting to show that, at least through epidemiological studies, that uh, they have lower mortality than people who don't have those things. Uh,
Right.
yeah, and I mean, we'll expand upon that a little bit later on, but I think
Yeah.
we should start with defining what health is,
I
because
was just. Yep.
uh,
Go ahead.
because everyone talks about being healthy or doing this or doing that for my health, but I don't think we've ever really understood, or at least the way we practice medicine nowadays and what people view as medicine. I don't think people have a really good understanding of what that even means. Uh, so if it's okay with you, I'm going to try to bring some clarity to that so that we can continue this
For sure.
conversation.
That would help for sure.
Uh, so health, as defined by the World Health Organization, is a state of optimal physical and mental well-being. And so there's certain factors that contribute to that. And I'm a big advocate for the field of lifestyle medicine because lifestyle medicine incorporates and integrates those six factors. So those six factors are a predominantly whole food, plant-based eating pattern, so a component of nutrition, exercise, stress management, social connectedness, sleep, and the reduction of harmful substances. And what we find is that it's really those six things that either that drive us toward disease or drive us to optimal well-being, and optimal health. And so it's modulating those factors. And I know one of the things that's important to you is really talking about mental health and emotionally how that impacts us overall. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding that and for your audience.
So diving in, right? Like mental health is always about mentally feeling optimal or stable, right? So these six pillars, do you believe these six pillars, if one does them correctly, they can achieve happiness? Would that be like possible?
So in achieving happiness, that's what the entire field of positive psychology is based on. And so there's a lot of research coming out now in historically, we have always studied mental health through the lens of disease, like what makes people sick. We never really studied, what makes people well? What makes people more resilient and people who have a sense of optimism and well-being, and just like there's like these bright, gregarious people that people are positively drawn to. And so there's sort of six factors. I think his name was Dr. Seligman. He was in like the early 2000s who sort of coined the positive psychology field. And so he looks at really five factors that are sort of contribute to happiness. The first is having positive emotion. And so people who view life with a sense of optimism tend to be happier. And so you can ask people, how satisfied do you feel with life? How often do you feel like life is going well? Do you feel well today? And the people, you ever met those people that they're like, today was great, this, that, or oh man, life is great. Like that, they're just all, and doesn't matter what day it is, what's going on in their life, they just always have like this satisfaction.
They're constantly cheerful and like energetic. I feel that. So.
Yes. And so that's one contributing factor. The second factor is engagement. Do they feel connected and excited to the things that they do, whether it be the work that they do, whether it be with their families? Do they feel connected to these things? And again, are actively engaged and mindful of these things.
Is there more to go through?
Oh yeah, there's three others. There's three others.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and then we can elaborate and talk about these things some more.
Awesome.
The next factor is relationships. Like, do the quality of their relationships? Do they feel supported? Do they have a variety of relationships? And do they feel nurtured and gain support? And does that enhance their experience and value system? So that's another factor. The fourth is meaning. Do they find meaning and purpose in their lives? And it doesn't have to be tied to work, because you can be a mom, right? And your purpose is to provide support for your family and nurture your family. And that could be all the meaning that you need. And that's a very meaningful life.
Yeah.
And the last is feeling like a sense of accomplishment, meaning that you can look back at the things that you did and feel like a sense of pride in what you did and what you're doing. And uh, uh, and so if you look across the continuum along those five things, those tend to be pretty good predictors of happiness. And this is just my opinion, but I think that within our society today, people for 8 to 10 hours of their day are engaged in, let's just call it work. They're just engaged in an activity that they don't find fulfilling, that in a way may be lonely for people, just because just you're surrounded by people. If you're surrounded by people that you may not relate to or be working together with on a specific mission, you may not be emotionally connected. So that's essentially loneliness. Is this mental state of not feeling connected to others. So when you're in that environment for a third of your day and you're being exploited for your labor, you're probably not going to feel happy. You know?
And to touch base on that too, like many people now have work from home jobs, right? Me being one of them. And when I used to go to the office, I used to have all these connections with people. I used to go play ping pong downstairs with some of them. I used to go out for a happy hour. Now, since the pandemic, I mean, dude, it's just like working from home just feels like you're trapped in a cage. You're almost in a jail cell. And this feeling of isolation and loneliness is there after doing it for like 2 years. So, yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely like one of those factors that play into it, you know? So,
Yeah, and I think yeah, that's why there's so much depression it, it during COVID. Well, COVID had a twofold effect, I believe. I think from one angle, for a lot of people, it, people they lost they lost their relationships because they were now socially isolated. And I want to make the distinction between being socially isolated and lonely, because they're two different things.
correct. Yep.
Yeah, being socially isolated just means that you're physically displaced, and that you're just physically, you don't have people around you. Being lonely is you have people around you, but may not necessarily feel connected to them, and so you're emotionally isolated. And so those are two distinctive things. Yeah, so people lost the quality of their relationships. They lost a sense of meaning. So if they were engaged in work with people, working on a mission that they cared about with people that they enjoyed, you lost a sense of meaning. You lost a sense of accomplishment. You know, you weren't engaged. And so I agree with you, man. For COVID also on the flip side, I think a lot of folks realized that work wasn't fulfilling, that being engaged, finding a sense of meaning, having a sense of accomplishment, being accomplished in the things that provide you with meaning, that's important. And they looked at their jobs and said, my job, it doesn't do any of those things. I need to completely shift gears, you know? So sort of looking at it from that lens, it kind of makes sense, you know?
It does, and I feel like a lot of people during COVID realized too, like, hey, maybe this is not the right thing for me, and they pursued new passions. And a lot of people found meaning. Like one of your other points that you made, like meaning is such a big one too. I think if you don't have any meaning, you feel all the other symptoms definitely do creep up, right? And things such as like depression, loneliness, and stuff like meaning is like the biggest thing because I feel like if you know why you're doing something, the why word, you definitely know what you're gonna accomplish to a certain degree in the future, but at the same time, it motivates you throughout the whole journey, right? So,
Absolutely. And there's this sort of like terminology that we use in the field that there's like hedonistic, which is like short-term materialistic pleasures, and eudaimonic pleasure, right? Which is seeking activities that induce pleasure, but that they're tied to like something purposeful and meaningful. Uh, and, And so, yeah, you can seek quote unquote happiness, or feelings of pleasure. Let's not call it happiness, but more so feelings of pleasure. But there's two distinct arenas to get it from. And typically, what we see in society is because we tend to lean on hedonistic sources of pleasure versus eudaimonic sources of pleasure, because this is just an absence. It's like we don't find we're not engaged in activities that that are eudaimonic, and so we turn towards like the drinking, the concerts, the parties, the other
Turning up.
activity, turning up, sex, drugs, rock and roll, you
There you
know,
go.
to get that short term, like hit a dopamine, to get us through versus finding things that are meaningful.
No, and it definitely does feel good in the moment, right? But then deep down, like I feel like sometimes I'm like out partying and I'm thinking of like what I should be doing with my life. But I guess everybody kind of goes through that, right? Like you're at that club or you're out somewhere and you're just like, man, I should be doing something else in my life. But you're still like, kind of taking part in these activities to be form social connections, to just kind of have a stress relief. So how does one manage their health, like the stress that comes with it? How would you say like stress management? How would that work and stuff?
So, from a scientific standpoint, yeah, there's something that's thrown around a lot in the community. It's called MBSR, or mindfulness based stress reduction, which is really just an acknowledgement. It's just being conscientious, and for lack of a better word, mindful of what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, allowing space to recognize it and accept it, and being in a place of acceptance. Because I think what tends to happen is that uh, a lot of the things that cause us stress, or a lot of the feelings that we get, for a lot of people, they feel them, but they never take the opportunity to explore the why did these feelings get triggered? What was the trigger? Does it really make sense that I'm feeling this? And really taking that deep dive, we just sort of just react and then try to do something to
Yeah.
counteract that without, really acknowledging that.
Right.
You know, I'll give you a clear example with myself. I had to give a talk at a conference recently, and I felt this enormous level of like just stress and pressure, and
Yeah.
it was just like I was nervous, and usually I have no problem speaking in public, uh, but I was scared, and I felt this pressure, and there was this fear, and when I had to take a step back and kind of think about it, I'm like, dude, why are you nervous? You're never nervous to speak in front of people. And when I thought about it, it was like, well, I want I want to communicate this idea of what is lifestyle medicine, why it's so important in medicine. And then I had to think about it, and I was like, oh, well, why is it making you nervous that in communicating that you've communicated that many times? And then it was like, well, I don't want people to, or I was afraid that the audience wasn't going to see my viewpoints as valid. And it's like, well, why does that make you afraid that they're not, like, how does that impact you, that if they're going to view it as valid or not? And at the end of the day, it was just rooted in this internal need. It was basically my own like self-prescribed need for feeling competent, right? Is that I wanted to feel a sense of competence, right? And that if I communicated effectively and I presented logical arguments and data, if I did that correctly, people would internalize my messaging, right? Because it's correct. And that in itself means that I'm competent. Uh, and it goes deeper than that. It's like, well, you can take it deeper than that. Well, why do you feel like you have to have a sense of competence? So it's really sort of breaking these things down. And it was just also me having to say, hey, it's okay. Like that doesn't dictate your value in the world. That doesn't dictate whether you're a good physician or not. Like, again, I had to actually think about these things and not just react to the emotion. And there's other techniques like breathing techniques. And there's a variety of modalities within that that target stress reduction. Physical activity and exercise is a great stress reliever. Again, engaging in enjoyable activities with people that you care about, people that you love, people that love you, again, is a form of engaging in activities that you find meaningful. Like for some people, that's art. It's like drawing, or going out in nature is their form. So there's a variety of things that people do. And I think it's tied to what we were talking about earlier. Things that either people find positive, they can reflect a positive emotion on. It can either be engaged with some sort of relationship that is positive for them, something that gives them a sense of meaning and purpose. Those are all means for reducing your stress.
No, and definitely, and I commend you for kind of like getting your message across out there because it's not easy. Sometimes I just feel like as humans, like we do so much research and data, but like sometimes we have to tell ourselves too, like, hey, like it's okay, it's gonna be all right. I have to break this down, and I guess you found your why, right? Like, why am I doing this in the part when you were presenting, in the conference? So I think that's awesome. So what also are you would say like to promote that kind of like stress management and a lot of these other positive habits, like what are the factors that promote health exactly? Um, would you could you get into that a little bit and help us understand like what really drives health and lifestyle medicine?
Lifestyle medicine is it's an emerging and rapidly growing field of medicine, and it's tied to the application of 6 pillars, and like I mentioned earlier, which are
Yep.
uh, nutrition in the form of a whole food plant-based eating pattern, exercise, sleep, stress management, social connectedness, and the reduction of harmful substances. When I help a patient to change those things, not only can we prevent disease, but we can treat and in intensive cases reverse disease. So if you have high blood pressure, you have sleep apnea, you have diabetes, we can reverse and drive these things into remission, get you off of medication. And so the question is, historically in medicine, we knew 2 tools: surgery, pharmacotherapy. And like, it was either we had a hammer and a hacksaw, and literally everything we just hammered or hacked or chopped it, and
Right.
and some really astute physicians along the way said, wait a second, we have tons of medication, tons of procedures, but people's life expectancy is decreasing. The United States, despite us spending 4 more times per capita than every other developed country, we ranked nearly last in health outcomes. So it's like something isn't right. And you know what it was too? Was
What was it?
physicians themselves becoming afflicted with the very diseases that they were studying. And when they engaged with the health system and it didn't solve their problems, they had to go and look like there has to be another way. And for a lot of older physicians, that's kind of how they stumbled upon this. Like for a lot of them, they ended up changing their lifestyles and they got better. And so naturally, the scientists within them said, why is that? What happened physiologically? And they really dove deep. And one of the leading things that we're seeing today is just the role that dietary choices play in driving disease. Obesity is exploding. Obesity and diabetes are like single-handedly are like driving the chronic illness epidemic, and it's really related to our food quality. What we've come to define as food. Actually, we should take the opportunity now and define what is food. Um, Food for me,
Pizza, burgers.
huh?
Yeah.
But food for
Right.
me is something that it induces optimal physical and mental well-being, which we defined earlier as health. And so, if you're ingesting something that doesn't do that, is that really food? And I think historically, what we've come to define as food is just something that has calories and certain micronutrients. And what we know now is that it's not just calories in, calories out, and vitamins and minerals. That what we eat has a profound impact on our physiology, specifically in our gut. And the hot topic right now is the gut microbiome. How predominantly ultra processed food and plant based food, how it shifts what we call the gut microbiome, or the populations of bacteria, viruses, fungi in our gut, and how that's tied to the immune system and how that drives disease. Um, uh, it, I can probably talk for the next hour, but I know we don't have an hour. So I want to provide the most value to you and your audience. So if you have any questions about, we can talk, we can
Yeah,
spend it.
I have so many. I mean, thank you so much, doctor. And like, and Saul. And the thing is, like, no, it's interesting because there's like so much about gut health that is blowing up too, right? And thing is, like, there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria for you, and it does. The good bacteria helps you aid in weight loss as well, and helps you with a lot of other things that are going on in your body. And the fact that, yeah, I think something very interesting you said was the fact that lifestyle medicine helps without just the scientific, drugs and substances coming in, but it also helps you understand like how you could go something in reverse. And like, even with me and my family, we have like a history of diabetes. We have a history of, sedatives to take, right? So like, definitely lifestyle medicine is like what everyone can benefit from, especially the audience too. And it's not just like, okay, let me take a pill, pop that, and like continue living, but let me also change my lifestyle, change those like implement those 6 pillars in my life and then make a change, right? So I think that's such an important thing. But going back to the questions, yeah, I have a lot. So I would say, what is your biggest life lesson you learned from pursuing lifestyle medicine, and is it something that you still carry to this day?
That's a great question. Uh,
Thank you.
so I always, quote unquote, considered myself to be like health conscious.
Nice.
And, it was always something that was important to me because I wanted to be the best version of myself. And so I, when I was in high school, I was a track athlete, and physical activity and
Nice.
exercise was important to me. Uh, uh, and and I knew that like nutrition played a role in that. Uh, Little did I know that uh, I got most of my information where most people get, just hearsay stuff on the internet, uh, and a couple guidelines here and there like USDA. It wasn't until I got to the field of lifestyle medicine and a lot of the folks who are on the forefront of all this science, um, which most of the medical community is like in the dark, and that is the scary part, that the people who we view that are supposed to be the vanguards of health that should be communicating to us don't know, have no clue. Because it's not taught in medical school, it's not emphasized in residency, and to be frank, most people in medicine really don't live healthful lifestyles. um, so it wasn't until I really got exposed a year before medical school, that I was like, holy smokes, like I need to continue to refine this. And I think all of us are on this journey. I think all of us like to think that we're living in a healthful way, right? Uh, uh, and including me, I was there. But I think we need to continue to strive. And I think if the message that I sort of want to put out to your audience is like, Google lifestyle medicine, find a lifestyle medicine physician, because these are the folks who are at the cutting edge. These are the folks who are studying exercise physiology, who are studying the relationship between exercise and disease, food and disease. Like a lot of the gut microbiome, there's a gastroenterologist who, again, he's a lifestyle medicine oriented GI doctor, and he's really one of the biggest proponents and people who's been talking about the relationship between food and the gut microbiome. And so I encourage people to, because traditional medicine, it's missing in traditional medicine. So where else are you supposed to get it from?
Right,
and,
right.
And I think that's why I've been such a huge advocate, is because it scares me. It scares me in that our generation we're going to be the physicians for the next 20 to 30 years. And it would be very difficult for me to just sit back and let that happen, knowing that someone who has high blood pressure is going to be just told, here, take this medication, or who has diabetes, just take this medication and watch. Because medication, the way I see it, yeah, it's good, but it's like duct tape. It doesn't really fix the underlying problem. Mm-hmm. It just kind of patches it up, but the leak is still there. And eventually that thing is going to and so I've seen enough suffering in the hospital, and I've seen what happens when we don't address these things. And I don't want to see a future where people are suffering unnecessarily over something that's so simple. It's what we put on our plates. It's how we move. It's how we relate to other people. It's easy. Yeah, you don't need to design some super hyper fancy rocket procedure that's going to cost $80,000 for a problem that can be so easily fixed.
Do you think as humans we overcomplicate everything? Because I feel like honestly the answer to a lot of these, like what you're saying, I think it should be simple, right? It should be not so complicated, and you shouldn't be taking all these, like, as a first resort, like medications to, quote unquote, put on a duct tape, put on a seal. But why is that? Like, why do we make things so complicated? Why are people so scared to, like, move and, maybe take charge of their diabetes or something that's so reversible, but it's like they turn to insulin or something. Especially for type 2, if I'm correct.
Well,
I'm not a doctor, so.
I think there's multiple factors to that. I think, for one, I always tell people the solution is simple. The science behind it is complex, but that doesn't preclude doing the simple thing, even if we don't. Understanding the science is a little bit more complicated. I think the people that we recruit into medicine, because they don't live these things themselves, it becomes harder for patient. Again, it's hard for patients to implement it when the folks who should be providing the example and communicating the information, A, don't do it for themselves, and then B, know nothing about it. And so, A, you need the information, and right now the folks who are supposed to be that source of information don't know it or have it. So that's one problem. And then B, I think it's creating environments and structures that induce positive behaviors. So, and just a very simple thing, a lot of these things are more public health focused. Like, you're more likely to go and walk if you have sidewalks, or the people you surround yourself with. If they're people who like to go hiking and be outdoors or play sports, those are your friends, so you're more likely to engage in those activities. Uh, but there has to be environments that allow for that. So when you place parks or green spaces near people, they're more likely to want to spend time outside and be outside and engage in outdoor activities. So I think all these things play sort of like a role as to what allows people to engage in behaviors and then sustain them. We can have an entire conversation. I mean, we could probably talk for 3 hours as to what are all the social determinants of health and what are things that allow people to engage in health promoting behaviors.
Well, let's talk about it. I mean, I would love to know a little bit about it, I guess. So, what are those components that do help people engage in, like, social behaviors that are like helpful? What are those things?
Uh, so there's an entire category that are deemed social determinants of health, and one of the biggest ones to start off the bat is just poverty or economic empowerment. If you're struggling just to meet your basic needs of housing, transportation, the last thing you're worried about is exercising. Yeah, the last, uh, if you have to work two jobs just to make ends meet, and that requires you to sacrifice and only sleep 5 hours a night, that's what you're going to do. Uh, uh, and so until people's basic needs can be met, it's very difficult to engage in those behaviors. The other thing is too is we have to create structures to allow for those behaviors. When you live in a food desert and the closest supermarket that offers fresh food is about 12 miles away, and you don't have a car, and that means getting in a bus, commuting for an hour and a half, having to carry tons of bags, commute another hour and a half back, versus walking a block down the street to the bodega or the Popeyes. Like, man, Popeyes for $3.99 versus a 3 hour trip, bags.
So much easier to save too, you see a savings. I mean, it's easy to save when you're eating junk in your body, right? I noticed that too. I feel like healthy food is so expensive. You can go to like Freshie or Collard Green and
Yeah,
it'd be just expensive.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, uh, it's and I think that's part of the process is trying to make the trying to make the healthy choice the easiest and the default choice. Um,
No, definitely. No, I definitely agree with that as well. So, okay, so I think I have more questions as well. Does social media, could you use social media to help you regarding lifestyle medicine, and can it get you can it help you get your message across to people that are far away, like those people that can't attend your conference or whatsoever, right? Like people that are just looking up to you, or maybe they have an interest in your field. How, like, you think social media has like an effect on that where you can use it positively for that?
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, any platform that you can use to disseminate information, whether it be social, and we've seen that, right? That social media is a very powerful medium. And there's been a lot of
Right.
conversations in the professional space of how can health professionals use that medium to combat misinformation and use that as a viable platform. And I think there's a lot of conversation about how do we develop ethics around health communication and using social media as a medium to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely think that it's like a way where, one can learn from all the teachings that you kind of have to, when it comes to the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. But it's something that, social media can help get the message across, right? Like the truth about doctors, the truth about like just like how it is nowadays, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us today. I think a real world view really makes an impact, right? Rather than hearing like, oh, this is a medication and this is what I can do. Um, so I guess what is your advice to those that are struggling with implementing all 6 pillars in their lives? Is there like a technique to it, or is every pillar, its own thing?
I would say The first thing I would do is a just congratulate them for even thinking about it and even considering it. Right? Next thing I would say is find people who love and want to support you becoming the best version of yourself, and really approach it with humility. I think like we're all on this journey, including myself, someone who studies this day in and day out. We're all trying to reach an optimal state. And that means we're always going to be on that continuum of striving to be the best that we can be. And no matter where you are in that journey, if you're just getting started or if you've been on that for a while, none of us have reached the mountaintop. We're all trying to get to the highest point for ourselves. And so you don't have to feel ashamed of that. I would say celebrate that. And kudos to you for like coming on board. And you have an entire community of people that want to help and support you. You can call, message, email, hit me up on social media. I am happy to just give that any information that you need for free and just give you what you need to get you to where you want to be. And I think all my colleagues want the same thing.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, man, and I really appreciate you, just sharing my posts and also supporting me. I mean, I was thinking like people don't, not everyone has money for copay, not everyone has money for insurance. So, whatever holistic approaches we can have on this podcast would really help, especially for those that can't afford stuff, especially from like just any kind of way, right? Because not everyone has money like that. So I think it would really, really help.
Yeah, you just mentioned a great point in that is sort of the problem that I am trying to solve is just from an ethical place is that this information as healthcare traditionally is like fee for service, meaning you come to the office, I give you something, whether it be information, a prescription, or I do something to you and you get paid. And people may not agree with me, but I don't feel that this perspective or this information that I have should be withheld in exchange for money so that people can then live their most optimal life. And so part of what I would like to explore, and I guess the social experiment question that I have is, can we redefine or transform our healthcare system to one where it becomes profitable by people engaging in the very behaviors that they need to make themselves well? That when people engage in those behaviors, the healthcare system actually does better than when they don't. And and my own value system is that I don't want to withhold this information so that and that people have to give me money to get it. Like this should just be given to people. In a natural economy, there always has to be, because certain things require resources to produce, and people's time and energy should be compensated. But I feel conflicted as a physician. Like, hey, like something simple like what's on your plate, I shouldn't withhold that information just so that you can do better. Or I shouldn't withhold that knowing that can just make you better and ameliorate so many problems and avoid surgery, disease. Like, that's a simple thing. That's what we do on a daily basis. And so
exactly, and I think someone that wants like a quick turnover, maybe like they have like a son, a daughter, and they're very young, and they don't have enough money to like change their lifestyles, and they look at lifestyle medicine, and just a doctor giving them advice and getting paid for it. I mean, in that quick turnover time frame of whatever their kid is going through, I think the last thing they care about is money, right? So I think just having that knowledge for them would be really helpful, and it goes for a lot of other fields too. I really think it should be some kind of funded program or something.
I, I I definitely think that for more complex cases, there'll be a role where there'll have to be some sort of funding. But the reality is that the funding is there. It's just misallocated. So healthcare as a whole is almost a $4 trillion industry. The thing is that we allocate a lot of that money into medical care, which by default, medical care only accounts for 10% of someone's entire health outcome. Uh, and if we were to take that money and actually put it in the community, put it into programming put it into the hands of farmers, into the food system, put it into exercise professionals, and creating a health promoting economy and health promoting ecosystem, we can actually keep a population well. But right now, we keep it in the hospital. And I'm not saying that doctors now don't do good work. I think in select cases we do, but I think we can do better and be more effective by allocating that funding into community programming that is founded on lifestyle medicine. And I think we can be very effective there.
I agree, and it's great food for thought too. And I think it's one of those things where it's going to take time, but if the right people are formed and the right groups come into place, I think we could really make an impact when it comes to addressing that issue in our government or just in our country, right? Because I feel like a lot of other countries have free healthcare system going on, and it's just like sometimes I'm like, man, I don't know why we don't have that, right? So
That is true. We can put free in quotations in that those governments or those societies as a collective have decided that there was, the tax rates in those countries are actually pretty high. Like I think in Germany,
it's pretty absurd. Yeah,
30%. It's pretty high, but people are willing to pay that, and because they know that they're contributing to the collective and that they're receiving benefit for that. I think what happens here is that if you look at your W-2, you probably have $800 to $1,200, and this is I'm just saying for the average income earner that's
right
being applied to Medicaid, and Medicare. Medicaid and Medicare only applies to a small portion of the population, and that's being spent on medical care, really expensive, inefficient care at the hospital. And I can have another podcast and tell you about all the ridiculous stuff that I saw in the hospital and why we have the inefficiencies that we have, but we'll leave that for another time. I think going back to your earlier point, things do need to be paid for. And so I think in the future, lifestyle medicine physicians will be able to take really sick patients and put them through our equivalent of of critical care, which is how do you take someone with heart failure and in early stage heart failure and do cardiac rehabilitation and do weight loss and optimizing their diet. Can we get them to a point where we drive a lot of those early heart failure symptoms into remission? And I think part of the science that we don't know yet is to what extent do people with heart failure, can they even get better? The basic science tells us that through exercise, it induces cardiac remodeling in a beneficial way. But I don't think we've ever intensely have studied when we do very, very, very intense lifestyle modification to include all components of someone's well-being, what that induces physiologically. So again, lots of research to be done. I think there's a lot of potential and a lot of growth for the field. And I think it's a really exciting time because we're actually going to be able to make people well. And we've seen that, we've done that in the profession. And it's a matter to continue to expand that and impart this knowledge onto people so they can be empowered and take it upon themselves to keep themselves well for the most part.
No, and definitely as you are in this career path, I would definitely love to hear your stories as we go further, and maybe you come on another second, third, fourth, fifth episode with you, and just understand all these stories. It'd be so cool to know someone can get back to that 100% after a heart attack. I know the heart suffers a lot, like when you do have a heart attack, and just there's so many complications with it. I don't know if this is true. I'm not a doctor, but I know part of the heart dies almost like when you have a heart attack. So, and I don't know if that's fully true. I'm not a doctor, but um, I know it comes with complications moving forward. That much I know. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Is that there's a part of the in really bad people have really bad heart attacks or it what we call ischemia that leads to tissue death. That part of the tissue that if it does die, they have over a course of a couple months, it becomes scar tissue and sort of like non-functional. Uh,
wow.
and so in those folks, uh, can you have an improvement? It's hard. It's hard to say. Uh, I think that's the beauty of science is that science, you develop a hypothesis and then you test that hypothesis. And fortunately for us, there were physicians a long time ago that hypothesized that, there's a relationship between obesity and disease. Uh, I think food may play a role in that and exercise. And if we do that, people get better. And people did. And that completely changed the
Awesome.
paradigm for diabetes care, for high blood pressure. And we need more courageous physicians that are willing to be scientists and ask these questions and then figure out the answers. That's what the doctoral degree is all about.
And it's almost in this, and I love how you said that physicians need to be like scientists because, yeah, I think the issue is these ultra processed foods, right? And we need people like you to speak up and give us a platform and give people the ability to really believe in you guys because I feel like a lot of people say they believe in doctors and they take your opinion twice as more seriously or 100 times probably more seriously than the average person, right? Because everyone thinks they know everything. And I feel like if it comes from a doctor, I feel like someone can take that very personally. And from a patient standpoint, what you say matters a lot. And it's very impactful to what they're going to do next with their life, right? So that being said, on a lighter note, I see you're a runner. From a social part of the lifestyle medicine pillar, does promoting diversity within your social group while you run with people, does it help you also form strong social connections and you see like it's a benefit to you overall?
Oh, 100%. I think we live in a world with many different traditions and perspectives, and uh, you know you're gonna laugh and find this funny, but a a year ago I attended my first Indian wedding. And and, and so I got to go. I got to go to the Mendi, the Sangeet, and then the reception, and to be brought into people who I cared about, because my close friends, and to be able to share, to experience and share their culture, right, in a more intimate way. It was so enriching for me. I can't explain to you. I always have a hard time. I feel like it sounds corny, but that's really how I felt. Because because of them, I got to have access to a world that I would have never had access to, right? And partake in these experiences. Yeah. And I think that's what's cool. And I think a lot of people, and I don't want to be controversial here, but I think most people don't want to like appropriate. I think in a way people want to be able to experience someone else's experience. Uh, and maybe sometimes we don't go about it the right way. But I really do, think that people are well meaning and we value people's differing experiences and we want to be able to partake in those things. And so, yeah, I think that's incredibly valuable to have a diverse group.
No, it's a beautiful outlook, man. I really commend you for it because Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, just putting yourself out there in a culture where it's still like different diversity, different backgrounds. I mean, yeah, it's a part of like, yeah, it's not the same culture as you, but it's also, like you said, people are good people, and then there's people that are welcoming to you, right? And even my brother, he plays soccer, and he hangs out with a lot of people who are Hispanic, like different kinds of like Caucasian people, like other kinds of people as well, Indian people. And the thing is, like, I notice it. I notice like how much he knows. I notice like he's into some kind of cultural thing, and like just understanding like stuff that he brings to the table, and like how I'm learning from a 16-year-old. It's just amazing, man. And I think we need to keep that in mind. Like, when you meet new people, don't be afraid. I think form those social connections and see what they're about. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two, right? Or like you said, get welcomed in a community that you never had access to. I think that's huge. So um, I just have a few quick rapid fire rounds for you, but it's just like lighthearted. So no worries, man. So just here you go. Happiness or wealth?
Happiness or love?
Or wealth? Wealth. Like
Oh,
rich. Wealth.
well, I can tell you right now, being a lifestyle medicine physician and pursuing lifestyle medicine, I definitely don't do it for wealth. So happiness,
Let's go.
happiness is the greatest wealth.
Awesome. No, that's great. I agree. AI or VR?
What?
Virtual reality or artificial intelligence? Which one do you pick more? Like favor more?
Oof.
Because it's like the
I
little like the thing that
yeah.
shows you the real
It,
virtual view. 'Cause AI is almost like a robot, right? Like I think
yeah.
it can do its own thing. So
I I want to remain optimistic, and I know there's a lot of dangers with AI, but I think the potential, the impact, the positive impact it can have on humanity. So I'm going to lean on AI.
yeah, it's like almost like automation on crack. So okay, so what's your favorite exercise?
My favorite exercise. Uh, I think now I really like, uh, man, this is tough. I recently picked up rock climbing, and
Okay.
I think what I like about it so much is that um, it it allows for a lot of people. There's no one way uh, to to solve what they call the problem or climb the path. Like if you're tall, you're going to climb it very different from a short person, but both people can achieve the same outcome. And
True.
and and it requires you to use your body in a variety of ways, in ways that and move in a variety of ways that we traditionally don't because of our just American sedentary lifestyle. So
Right.
I really enjoy it for that.
Right. No, it's so true. And like I thought of like how you said tall person, short person. I thought of Messi, right away. Like soccer, he's just one of the shortest guys out there. But he's killing it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Who are your favorite role models? Favorite role model? Just name. You don't have to explain anything.
Favorite role models. Oof.
Like MLK, Kobe Bryant.
That is a very difficult question
Okay.
because a lot of people who he's a very controversial figure. I really like Elon Musk. I don't agree with everything he does, but
Okay.
I think what I appreciate is being able to look at the world, find the need in the world, and how do you create solutions and try to really impact the world around you, and how do you take unconventional approaches and always be at the forefront and be constantly thinking. So I think I appreciate more so uh, the way he problem solves and looks at the world. Uh,
Right.
maybe his business practices and the way he treats people are very questionable. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, but ultimately, in trying to uh, make us a multiplanetary species and decrease our dependence on fossil fuels, I think those are all laudable goals. And just the way, how do you do that in a very hostile environment? Because going up against the automotive industry, man, that's just like asking for failure. But still managing to do it, that's respectable, at least in my opinion.
And he's holding up against his own, right? Because it's just like so many people doubted him during that time frame of saving, spend gas, save power, but he proved everyone wrong, because it's one of those impossible feats that not a lot of people could have achieved. And from that aspect, I agree with you. I think he's legendary in that sense from the electrical, motor vehicle industry. Everything else with the Twitter and all that stuff,
Yeah,
I question it, but
yeah,
but it's pretty funny too at the same time. So I ain't gonna lie.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's the thing, right? It's like, how do you? I think more so, it's the example of how do you hold on to an ideal and persevere, even if other people can't see it. And that's really been my entire experience in the field of lifestyle medicine. Was that I believe this to be fundamentally true. In 2014, nobody knew what this was. I talked to faculty and my colleagues, and they all kind of like giggled or scoffed, and
Right.
and I had to hold on to like, this is right, and this is right. I know this is right, and you see patients get better, uh, and I think that's what gave me the validity. It was when I actually saw patients getting better and patients coming off their high blood pressure medications and telling me that, like, oh, this is the first time in 20 years that I felt so great and I'm no longer on medication. I no longer require, like, that is what gave me the motivation to keep on going and know that, hey, people may not believe me, but this is the right thing to do. And we need to spread this message to as many people as possible. And we got to keep pushing forward because it's just the right thing to do. And yeah, so when you look at, and every successful business owner has sort of gone through that experience, is that you find a foundational truth and you stick with it, and try to make it a reality despite the naysayers. I mean, even Amazon, they're like, oh, that'll never work. It's like, and look at where we are today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's like a lot of stuff that like startups and stuff like that failed, and luckily, like a lot of these people that were like kind of like ridiculed like growing up, like Jeff Bezos worked out of a garage, right? I believe
Mm-hmm.
so. It was just like like you have to hold on to your truth, and your truth will be the only truth if you can hold on to it right enough. And even with me with this podcast, man, a lot of people were like, "Yo, you can't do this," or like there's no way you can talk to all these people like for an hour long thing. But I'm like, it depends if you're interested in people, right? And I'm interested to know where you're coming from because I'm trying to learn as a student. I'm not trying to be a teacher. I'm trying to learn and grow, right? So I would love to like have you on more. And thank you for answering all my rapid fire questions. I think
Yeah.
you did a great job, and having you on is such a benefit to the audience and just for lifestyle medicine. And if anyone wants to pursue it, go to Saul. So thank you.
No, again, I appreciate you just for having me and giving me a platform and access to your audience so that I can communicate this message and hopefully they can take some value. And again, I'm just super proud of you, man, because again,
Thanks, man.
you remember my reaction when I saw you after you made
Yeah,
this
I
change.
do.
And again, and
Yeah, you were ecstatic. You were like, "Wow, you can't believe you did this," and you were just so happy for me. So all love, bro. And I appreciate you too. And I always see you also. Like for those that don't know, Sal's cut as hell. So go to him for your physical advice. You know what I mean? He knows his stuff. And definitely, I might tend to you when I'm in my deficit form because right now I'm just meal prepping as much as I can. I'm trying to do what I can before March. The wedding season next year, and aunties are out, girls are out, things like that. So.
More than
All
happy
right.
to help you, my man. All
Appreciate it. But we can take this offline. But thank you so much for coming on again, Sal. Thank you, everybody.
right, thank you for having me.